Good evening, Charlton fans. I'm Ollie Groom and you're watching 1905 coming live from the Valley. Here's what's coming up on tonight's show. We hear from Charlton owner Roland Duchâtelet, look ahead to tomorrow's trip to Fulham and back on Tuesday night's win over Bolton. We also hear from Bob Peters, whose pre-match press conference was earlier today, and we're delighted to be joined live in the studio by Sky Sports News presenter Dickie Davis and Matchday Live commentator Peter Finch. Good evening, guys.
Evening.
Thanks for joining us. Just before we get going, just a reminder, you can send us your comments on Twitter using the hashtag CFC1905. You can use our Facebook group to comment on there, or new thing today, you can comment on the right-hand side down there on YouTube, and we'll take a look at your comments throughout. So, Dickie, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
You're the first sort of impartial person we've had, so your views will carry quite a lot of water, I'd say, from the fans. But you've seen a bit of us this season here at the Valley, and what's been your view so far?
Yeah, I've seen an awful lot of you. I've seen more of Charlton than I've seen of any other team. Really impressed. I remember distinctly at Brentford, them all walking out and thinking, I don't recognise half the team. This could take a while to gel. And immediately you could see the way they set up, the way Bob had set them up. It was, try and contain them first half. He knew they'd be excited, adrenaline would be pumping, and try and catch them second half, and it nearly worked. I've just been impressed with the way they've set up, the way they've played. It's an obvious one in that they're drawing far too many games, but they just need to get out of that habit of either taking the lead at 1-0 and then sitting back, or getting back into a game at 1-1 and then sitting back. They just need to go and kill teams off. But the teams they've played against, the way they've played, they've had some tough games. Wolves spring to mind. Brentford was no easy game on the day of the season. They've coped really well, and I think it's already turning up. Look at those top 8 in the division. I'll tell you what, it's going to be a really good division this year, because I think all 8 will be there come the finish. I think they'll all be there and thereabouts.
And we've pretty much played them all, haven't we? Which I think is a good reflection on us.
Derby, Wigan, and Brighton, who I thought would be there, but they're having a bit of a struggle. But and we've not been outplayed by any of them. I think the only team that really gave us any serious problem, the second half against Rotherham was pretty. We were really under the cosh, and a bit towards the end and on Tuesday night when we didn't finish the team off 2-0 up. But looking at the new signings, any of them stand out to you as really impressive or key signings?
I think someone like Duchatelet is an obvious one, because he's proving such good value at the moment. He might not have scored in a few games, but his work rate, his effort, just sensational. You look at someone like Goodmanson, who's looked good, Bayern's looks good. I just think, and also for so long you've had that problem with someone like Chris Solly, where you've not had any natural replacement. Suddenly Joe Gomez has come of age, he knows of it midweek, I can drop Joe Gomez in there, no problem at all, and Tucker Dien's done really well. I like Tucker Dien, a number of games I've seen him, and he's gone so close yet so far, but I think he's going to come. I think he's going to go on a run when he's going to score 8-9 goals in 12-13 games. I really do, because I've seen games when he could have had a hat-trick. But Duchatelet for me stand out, he's been absolutely terrific, and the good thing is, I think in a strange kind of way, him not scoring for a few games might have just put some Premier League sides off who might have been able to look at him to try and nab him in January.
So we get a few goals between now and January from Ego, and then sort of tail off at December and maybe get an injury, and we'll put somebody else in just to
15 and then 15 or 20 goals after February the 1st.
I see what you're saying there, Dickie. I'm with you all the way on that one.
Yeah.
And at the other end, a lot's been made about how stern our defence has been. Andre BK, Tail Ben Haim coming in this summer and surprised a few. Were you one of those?
Yeah, massively impressed. I thought when they bought them, BK was always a little bit hot-headed. There's always that worry that's going to spill over. I've seen you guys over half your games, and I've not seen a hint at any stage of him spilling over. Ben Haim has always been magnificent. And who would have said that you'd keep someone like Morrison out the team on the bench, and justifiably so at the minute. And that's absolutely no disrespect to him, but you look at those two, and you're looking at your goals. A goal the other night, again, corner's come over, it's been cleared, it's the edge of the area. Very rare that there's a ball in the area that causes problem for those two. They can, if they got someone close to them, they can pass it out. You see Ben Haim when he's got a striker close, he chests it, brings it out, and look at other strikers. Tonight, all the 3 front guys for Bolton pushing on, they get near BK, they don't want to touch him. They don't want to go, they sort of take, move towards him and go, well, we'll give you an extra yard. Because he is a handful. And you've got your work cut out anyway against him. If you upset him, you've got a real hard night on your hands.
With Ben Haim, I think a lot of Charlton fans were quite negative about the signing, because, as far as probably played in England before, but and he's getting on a bit, but he's played in the Champions League. He's played, in the Premier League. He's got a huge amount of experience. He's going to be half decent, isn't he? You can't be playing at that sort of level unless you've got something about you.
And I think any club that he's been at, every single club would say didn't let us down, and it's exactly the same here. Him and BK, in this division, I've not seen a better central pair combo at the back because they just look like they can handle absolutely everything. And that was the game the other night against Bolton. That was the first time when I've seen balls coming into the box where suddenly it looked like there might be a gap or two in the middle. That's the first time I've seen it. Otherwise, they look absolutely rock solid.
You've seen a lot of teams other than Charlton this year. Who's really stood out for you? The ones that you think are going to be up there come May?
I thought Wolves, when I saw Wolves here, I thought they were really good, and I can see them being there and thereabouts. Reading a little bit too hit and miss at the moment. I think the home form can let them down. Even away, they can struggle a little bit at times. I think at the moment that's why it's so open. That's what I mean about those 8 teams. I think Derby will drop points. Not sure Forest are going to stay the distance, and that's why I think those 8 there, I can see all those places interchanging. We all thought Wigan would be there.
Yeah.
We all thought Brighton would be close.
And possibly Fulham as well, a team who had an atrocious start. I think we'll talk more about them later on.
Sure.
But but what about Charlton? I mean, at the moment we're up there in that top 10 at the moment. Come May,
I can see playoffs, and that's in all seriousness. I honestly think they could be there and thereabouts. Like I say, I think there'll be. I'm not sure at this stage. It doesn't look like anyone's going to run away with it. I mean, look at Bolton the other night. Who would discount Bolton having a run and being there and thereabouts? And we've seen teams do it after Christmas. Pile on this division. You can see the way Lennon's already got them, working their guts out left, right, and centre. There's no reason why they might not have a late push. But I think that top 8, there'll be lots of changing. I think Charlton will be there and thereabouts.
It's going to be a key thing. It's going to be injuries, though, isn't it? Really, you get too many injuries, it could stack up and make life really difficult for some squads.
But any side in this division is going to have that problem. There's very, very few sides. Even I was at Southampton today, and Koeman was saying for his Capital One Cup game next week, he's saying I'm not going to change the squad that much. I haven't got that many players to change from. It's and that's Southampton. So Charlton, if any side in this division, you've got 3-4 key players out for the game against Bolton. Any side's going to suffer when you get 2 or 3 key, even top Premier League sides.
You get to post-match talk to most of the managers. What do you make of Bob Peters?
I loved him from the Brentford game. He just came out. I suggested what his game plan was. He put me right. Absolutely spot on. He's blunt. He's great. He's affable. He's happy to chat about the game with you. It's what you want in a manager. And you want a little bit of honesty, and he's been fantastic. And he must be doing something right. The way this lot have gelled, the way they're clearly playing for each other. I mean, the changes the other night. 3 big players out. Tucker DM put in a real shift. Budop put in a real shift. Musa did really well. He's doing something right. There's a spirit in that camp very quickly, and he looks like you can see him hugging the players. Hearn Grant, you can see he stuck his arm around him the other day. He's got something about him. You look at it with a lot of those managers, and you say, a good manager, go just yourself. Not that I'd ever get the chance. Would you play for him? Yeah, you'd work hard for him because you know that you get a bit of love back.
Yeah, and if you step out of line, you might get a bit of a bit of force.
I wouldn't be swapping my shirt at half time in a Bob Peters team, that's for sure.
So Peters, he saw us a lot last year as well, and of course over the last few seasons in the Championship, the last 3. What is the big difference with Bob coming in? What's the big difference in this season and last season? Why are we in the top 8 now compared to struggling last year?
Less cautious. Chris was obviously a very cautious manager, which is absolutely fine, and that does a job. Riga, I thought, did a fantastic job in such a short space of time, especially to keep up, and ultimately was probably unlucky to lose his job. But I get the feeling with this team, and I think what he's managed to do is he's brought in players that he wanted. We're talking, BK, Ben Haim, and all the others, the ones we've talked about. And I think he knew exactly what he wanted them to do. He knew what they could do, and therefore they fit into his plan, really, really well. I think the buys have been absolutely massive because it's probably most changes I can remember in a long time, over a summer for Charlton.
Well, there was the season before we won the League One title, and I think there were about 28 changes.
But you would never have had the likes of a BK, a Ben Haim. You were looking for players to get out of that division, weren't you?
You talk about Chris Powell being cautious and Bob Peters being attack-minded. Well, one was a defender and one was a striker. I mean, that comes into it with them, perhaps. Yeah,
and I think, again, sorry, with the Southampton analogy, but Koeman was saying today, he said he was okay as a defender, but actually he preferred
attacking,
coming forward, and he was saying, being honest, and sort of saying, sometimes I like other people to have a look at the defence and see how we're playing. I don't think it's Chris Hughton, another one who would probably be naturally cautious in the way he approaches a game. And he was a fullback. Kevin Keegan always used to bring, was one of the first Premier League managers to bring in defence, midfield, attack.
Yeah, and he had Mark Lawrenson in, didn't he?
Yeah, but would bring someone in to look after the defence, because he knew his strengths were attacking, whereas defending maybe less so.
Okay, on Tuesday night, Neil Lennon brought his Bolton Wanderers side to SE7 for his second game in charge of the Trotters. Here's the highlights and match reaction.
Charlton record in the Championship on Saturday. Tonight they welcome Bolton who began life under Neil Lennon with a win against Birmingham at the weekend. It's on Young. He tries his luck from distance, kept out by Henderson. Scored too far away from him. It's Boyens. It's the ball over the top. Chance here for Charlton. In comes the shot, and there's the opening goal of the game. Duchatelet with the goal. Brought it down well, held off the challenger Coxey, and just placed it inside the far post. There's Moxley. Young. Should play from Bolton. In comes the shot. Comfortable hold for Henderson. Could be in again here for Charlton. Clever layoff. Second goal of the game. Brilliantly worked goal from Charlton, and it was Johnny Jackson who applied the finish. Cool as you like. Davis for handball, breaks on the edge of the box, and Bolton are back in it. Just 3 minutes after Charlton had gone 2-0 up. Nice touch back, and Moxley just firing it low. Corner, chance for Beckford on the far post, headed off the line, and then in the end Henderson gets there. It's Beckford once more. Shot comes in. Charlton looking to spring forward. Here's Harriott, twisting and turning on the edge of the box. Long range effort, disappointing effort. There it is, Charlton back to winning ways. First defeat for Bolton under Neil Lennon. Charlton running out, winners by 2 goals to 1.
It's a massive result for us. If you see our team, very young team, the bench I think except for Michael Morrison, they were all under 21. So yeah, it was till the last minute we sweated, but again it's a massive result if you win it 2-1. And again, yeah, we have 22 points, so yeah, be very, very happy.
They're a decent side, and obviously they're pushing for the equaliser. So it was, you know, backs against the wall for probably half hour longer than we needed it to be, but you just got to see it through. You know, sometimes we haven't managed it and have only got a draw, but today I think everyone played their part and defended well, and we saw it through. So it doesn't matter how it's done in the end. It's a good win.
Okay, another nail biter somewhat. We've had a few of those this season, 1 or 2 at least. How did you make it?
I thought you did really well. I mean, with 3 big players out, it was a really, really tough game. Bolton were clearly fired up. Lennon's got them playing. We spoke to him afterwards and he said, you know, maximum effort is the minimum he expects from his team. When you could see it, they gave it and they just kept going away, a little bit like Wolves did. You know, the fitness levels of Wolves really impressed me, but I thought it was if you'd have said before the game, Bolton clearly fired up, they'd got their first win of the season. Bob mentioned it in his programme notes, you know, you just come off the back of your first defeat, they come off the back of their first or second win of the season, or certainly first win under Lennon. So it muddles things up a little bit in the form books, but take that 3 points. I think before you'd have said probably draw. It's a terrific 3 points.
Yeah, there was a bit of worry, wasn't there, going in with those 3 big players out, big players.
Yeah, and you get the goal from Dickie Davis, which was a really well taken goal, and it was the pass from Boyens was exceptional, but he still had a lot of work to do, and he's put it beyond the keeper, and that'll do him the world of good confidence.
You have to say he stepped up, didn't he?
Seriously,
definitely. But also to then with the second goal, when he's on fire, he thinks most strikers would have gone, I'm going to hit this.
When he's got a shout in his ear.
He got yelled at, he didn't have a choice.
But a lot of strikers would have gone on that, even if he is the captain, and he's laid it off. And you could see at the end the players going to congratulate him because they'd gone, it's a great effort. He could have easily hit that, and he's laid it off and made it easy for Jackson.
I think talking to Bob afterwards, I think what he wanted was them to push on and keep keep going and get the third goal and finish the game, because at 2-0 the game's never over, because you've still got, I mean, it was quite early in the first half, possibly in the second half when that second goal came, possibly too early. Sometimes you can score too early, and then it seemed that we were hanging on a bit at the end. Once they got the equaliser, Bolton's confidence was flowing through them, and they were just absolutely going at us.
Well, they had all that possession, but as we were saying, was watching it just there, Henderson didn't actually have too many saves to make. There was one off the line, which but Neil Danns was threatening out wide, doing a merry dance around the defenders, but the ball was never really coming in effectively and really hurting.
But then I think, as Dickie said, I think that you've got to put a lot of that down to the fact that Ben Haim and BK are in there and know what they're doing, so it's all very well playing a nice football. It's creating chances, and they had a huge amount of corners. It was something like 14 or 15 corners. Yeah, you did the maths. You told me about that. I keep a count during the game, and we only had about 3 or 4 corners in the whole game, and they had 3 or 4 times more than us. Huge amount of corners.
But we dealt with them well.
They didn't create anything from them.
And in fairness, that was the first thing Lennon said. I said, you must be disappointed with them. That's the possession you've had. He said, call it what you like, work rate, possession, whatever, means nothing unless we put the ball in the back of the net. And he said, if we don't, the reason we're in this position is because we're not good enough in the final third. We need to improve our quality. He was blunt about it and didn't begrudge Charlton the victory.
Based on that, do you think we're deserving of the 3 points, or do you think if they had got an equaliser, would you have said it was fair enough?
Probably on possession, I'd have gone just about draw, because in fairness, Charlton weren't flush with shots either. They didn't have many. I think the Duchatelet goal was the first shot on target from memory. So I would have said draws would have been about fair, I think.
Well, Peter's made a comment after the game. How everyone thought we'd be in the bottom 3. Every 442 magazine, all the newspapers.
I think Neil Lennon said it. Perennial strugglers.
Perennial strugglers. Neil Lennon. Where did we get that from? I mean, what were you saying in the summer, kind of looking at Charlton?
It's one of those. I thought, looking at the Premier League, I thought with Southampton making so many changes, I thought they'd struggle. But but you've got to be so careful when you say that, because players come in and it could be great, it could be awful. You just don't know. And like in that first game against Brentford, you could clearly see it was starting to gel very, very quick. Whatever he'd done pre-season, whether they gone away, whatever they worked on in training, you could in the Brentford game, for me, you could kind of see it straight away. So I mean, as soon as you see BK and Ben Haim, you think, well, they're going to be solid at the back to start with, and that's exactly what's happened. But I think as soon as you see the decent buys and names we know, when you see names you don't know, you go, really? But actually, I just didn't know half of them. But in fairness, when you see Ben Haim and BK, they're going to be solid, and the other lads have done them proud.
I think when we saw the Duchatelet that we signed him from Copenhagen, and you saw straight away he had Champions League experience, and he's playing for a decent side in Denmark, so it was a decent signing. But with some of the others didn't know necessarily, and you just think, I'm not too sure about him, don't know him yet, but judge him when I see him.
We've spoken about George already. Frank playing off him on Tuesday evening. It's the first time we've seen those two as a partnership. And how do you think Frank did? I thought he was quite effective, especially in the first half.
I think effective in the first half, and I think if he gets a chance to a run of games, and I think he will, because I think Igor's going to be out for a short, I don't know how long, for a while though, just to rest up that Achilles, because it's an Achilles, and out with an Achilles, because if that goes, that's a year out, isn't it? So I think he'll be nursed through that. But I think Musa is a great option to have in there. He's a creative player, and you want to see creative players on the pitch. He's got some nice little touches, and as he gets more used to the Championship and more comfortable, I think he'll get better.
I think point to prove as well. I think Musa, I think he's here and he wants to prove a point. And I think also the work rate the other night was terrific. You've seen Duchatelet work the line. He's still chasing the goalkeeper down in the dying seconds, and Bulot, Musa, Duchatelet all worked their socks off the other night.
I think you were saying that Duchatelet the other night there was more effort the other night.
Definitely.
As he sort of stepped up. I've seen what Igor does.
Yep.
If I want to stay on the side, I've got to match this.
Definitely.
Okay, moving on. Roland Duchâtelet has been in SE7 this week and was at the Valley for Tuesday night's game. We caught up with the Charlton owner for an exclusive chat yesterday, and here's part 1 of his exclusive interview.
Roland, just if we start with Tuesday night, your first game at the Valley this season. We were just saying before the camera started rolling, quite an eventful game, certainly in the last half an hour. What did you make of it overall?
Well, the problem is that all teams in Championship, they can win against any other team, and Bolton is a former Premier League side, very good players, you could see that. And it was a very tough win. I think it was we were well, very lucky with the fact that the opportunities went in, and at the end it was very stressful. But okay, we got the points, and it's the most important thing now.
I mean, in terms of, it's your first game here this season at the Valley. Obviously not the first time you've seen us play this season, but your first game at the Valley this season. It's a lot different to when you were last here in terms of the work that's gone on the pitch, the seats, everything about the stadium. I mean, how did you feel when you walked into the stadium?
Well, I think I'm proud now that because indeed we did many improvements which were very, very useful, and I think now we enjoy a much nicer setting, a much better pitch, and so I think it has been a very good investment.
And you can see the difference in the way the players can play football on the pitch. I mean, you talked about wanting young players and wanting to play, nice, attractive football. I mean, that pitch has been such a vital investment for us, and not just this season, but for the next 10, 15 years.
Yes, absolutely. When you play football, if you look at the cost of players, and in fact the cost of a pitch is also a high cost, but by comparison, it's worthwhile to invest in a pitch. That's what we did.
On the goals last night, George Duchatelet, and obviously a player you've known from Standard Liège before, and there was a chance to see a few of the players we signed over the summer, Henderson, right across the whole team, BK, Ben Haim, right through it. I mean, obviously you knew about a lot of those players before, but what did you make of the new look Charlton team?
Well, if you look at our standing now, it's we can really be very, very proud of the performance in general. So, well, I think it's very, very, very good, and the players do their best, and everything is okay so far. But in football, every week or every game, it's another challenge again. So it's.
Well, certainly this week with 3 games in 7 days or whatever it is, with Bournemouth, Bolton, and then Fulham all in less than a week. So it's good.
It's very demanding for the players. So, and you see, like yesterday, we had 3 key players missing: Igor Vetekele, and then Gudmundsson, and then Solly. Also Solly, who is 3 games. It was simply too much for him. So I think that's not so easy for us. And then still to win the game. Well, it's quite a performance.
Against a side of a new manager. I mean, obviously you've got many business interests, but how much have you been able to follow Charlton this season from home and abroad?
Yeah, I follow it constantly, obviously, and so I'm very pleased with everything so far, and so I hope that we will continue in the same way during the season. So.
One of the big decisions over the summer was obviously the appointment of Bob Peters. You mentioned in your press conference that you believed Bob was a coach. He would work with young players, he would get the most out of them, and he'd be a good manager for Charlton. I mean, 3 months into it, you've got to say it's like a good decision.
I think so, and also with respect to bringing young players, also José Riga didn't bring in immediately new players, and gave them a chance also. And in this season we have introduced already quite a few new players, and if you look at the table of academy players joining the first team, I think this season might be a record year again, or in any case the year might be a record year.
I mean, it's been since the start of last season. It's been 7 players now who've made their first team debuts, having come through the academy. I mean, it's an incredible number.
Yeah.
Incredible number. Just on those young players. I mean, at the time, we spoke about your philosophy is to plug the best young players available, and to build an attractive side that way. When we've signed people like Joe Gomez and Carl Grant to new contracts, I mean, I guess we're proving that we mean it now, aren't we, as a club? You know what I mean? We're getting our best young players, we're getting them to commit to their futures to us and showing them that this is the future for them.
The problem, in fact, for most clubs in Championship is that the owners, they want absolutely to move up in the Premier League, and there's a huge pressure on the managers to do that. And from a perspective of the managers, they can choose between a young player and then a player which has proven many times in other clubs that they are good players. And then it's an obvious choice for a normal manager to choose for the vested values in football. So it's extremely difficult in general convince managers to play young players, and that's the reason Bob Peters is here, because he's not scared to do it, and he just plainly does it. And obviously, if you look by comparison to any other club here in the London area, this proves that Charlton currently is the best club for young players to go and try their.
Okay, that's part one of 3 parts of the interview. Talking a lot about the academy, Dickie. You described Charlton as the best team in London for young players to get a chance, and it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the record is second tonight. I suspect Palace might take another view on that one, because they've had some pretty decent young players come through. Zaha,
all at once, though,
and others. Not all at once. And I think when you look at them and the quality of them, it's been absolutely terrific. Testament to the youth setup, but also to the managers to use them. It's no good having great kids if the manager's not brave enough to use them. And I think Peter said after, I was here when Gomez made his debut against Colchester, and he immediately said afterwards, I had a problem at right back, I haven't got a problem anymore. And that's, but you only find that out if you give them a chance to find themselves, to give them their head. You can't do it by just watching them in training. You've got to believe in them, and there's no doubt that he's given them a chance. But there are some terrific players coming through, and also with Poyet as well. Even guys I know that have been coming to this club for years and years and years, and seen the Scott Parkers and the Shelbys and others come through, going possibly the most accomplished player they'd seen at that age.
Yeah, I mean, 7 players in the past 12 months.
That's incredible.
That's an incredible. And not even Palace would have had that many, surely.
No.
I mean, and that's good, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
it's such. I mean, and so for a younger player thinking, at 8, 9, 10, with the parents thinking, I'm going to sign for this club, I'm going to sign for that. I've got these clubs. If you've got to say Arsenal, Chelsea, and maybe Charlton, gives Charlton a bit of an advantage. I know you got big names like Arsenal and Chelsea, but Charlton. It's there for youngsters, isn't it? That they can progress. There is a clear route path to the first team. Whereas, say, somewhere at Arsenal and Chelsea, how many actually come through and then become a regular for the club? It's so hard.
Well, it's like Bob. Roland was making the point in the interview that it's easy for the manager to go, experienced player, been there, done it, rather than my kid. You think of someone like Arsene Wenger or Pochettino, that's magnified times 20, 30, 40 when you're at that level. You look at the players that have come through. Ashley Cole was obviously the first to come through under the Wenger regime, Jack Wilshere, Gibbs, but there's actually very few who come through out of the countless players that have come in through. Like you say, when you're talking to a young kid who's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and saying, right, here's the 7 players that have come through in the last year, you've just got much higher chance, like Poyet, comes in early, chance to prove himself, big move.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, that's what we've now fixed,
But that's been fixed,
with that on the table, and Joe Gomez being an example, someone like Carlin, who's been fantastic, and
Dimitar Mitov is another one who's signed.
Someone who's gone under the radar a little bit. A lot of fans don't really know a lot about him, but I promise you they will do over the next few years, because he's a really, really fantastic talent.
And a
played
character.
for Bulgaria on the 21s already, so he's you've got something good there.
And in fairness to Roland, I think when he came in, owning the other clubs, there's always this fear at the back of fans' mind, isn't there, that are we just going to get cast off? Is everyone just going to switch around? Someone who's out of favour at Standard Liège, is someone who's out of favour here going to end up at Charlton? And actually, you look at the players that were brought in for really minimal outlay, Duchatelet being the only obvious one that you've paid for, others on frees, the players we've talked about, not just necessarily from his other feeder clubs. And I think that's a really good sign that he's willing to put his money where his mouth is. Again, I've no idea what the wage structure is, but Ben Haim and Beaky can't be cheap on the wages front, not at this level. And to actually go, I'm not just going to give them players from my other clubs, to go, Bob, which players do you want? Capture in, go and do the deal, bingo, and you end up in this position.
I thought he's got a good mixture, I think. You mentioned the players were going in. And I think every time we look at the bench, for example, on Tuesday, you look at that bench, there was only one player over the age of 21. Morrison. That was Michael Morrison. And the most senior below that was Nick Pope, and then you've got the 20, 19, 18, 17-year-olds below that. For the people who say, another one from Standard Liège or Charlton, Standard Liège's feeder club, and that it's the opposite. And
Bob's shown that, with 5-10 minutes to go in a game, he's not averse to putting a 17-year-old up. And Norwich, we were winning 1-0 against Norwich with 5 or 6 minutes to go, and he brought Ian Grant on for his debut. I mean, that's a brave decision to do that, because that could backfire. But if he thinks the player's right, and I think he picked Joe Gomez out fairly early on, didn't he? But as soon as he arrived, pretty much he'd seen Joe and he knew about Joe and put him in, had no qualms.
And it's funny, isn't it, when you look at you talk about other teams and you go, it's a really young bench, and you think, oh, you're not too sure what you're going to get. Look, you look at the bench the other night.
Enthusiasm.
What you more or less know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to get when you put Harriet on. You knew what he was going to get if you put Harlan Grant on. You know, it's a debut. What we're going to get from them. He's played most of them now. They've had a little bit of experience.
Just briefly as well, he touched on the renovations, all the money that's been spent on the Valley, making it. You know, the pitch is the obvious one,
That's
but everything else.
Thing.
Exactly. As an outsider looking in, coming here so regularly, what must be a...
I think the outside was great. Coming here for the first home game, was outside was great. It's a tribute to those big names down the years. Especially to your former groundsman as well. He'd be delighted to see himself there rather than on the, sticking a pitchfork in the pitch as our most young fans would know him. But the pitch is the obvious. I mean, when we first interviewed Roland, when he first came to the club, he called it an embarrassment. And he said, it's going to cost. And obviously there was a few options on the table. It looks like he's gone for the most expensive option. And it's paid off. I mean, look at it the other night. It's great, Nick.
It looks like it's going to be like that throughout.
And this stage last season was the beginning of the end of the pitch, really, when it was
unplayable.
But look at
we already had a game called off in August
Yeah.
at Doncaster, which ended up costing them 3-1 up, and then
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you won it when it was replayed, didn't you?
yes, yeah.
Paul Dickoff wasn't a happy man that night, but I think it's it's great. It's fun seeing a pitch like that, and massive if you're going to push for promotion.
Yeah. Okay, next up for the Addicts is a trip to Fulham tomorrow night in a match live on Sky. Earlier today, Bob Peters spoke to the media about the match at Craven Cottage.
You nearly through an arduous schedule this week. You played Saturday, you played Tuesday, and now you're at Fulham on Friday night. Do you think it's asking too much?
I don't know. I can tell you tomorrow after the game. Okay, today the boys went out for a little session because it's only 2 days before. After the game against Bolton, and now tomorrow you have a trip to Fulham. If I see that Kit Simons rested 4 or 5 players on Tuesday, I think it means business tomorrow. Okay, we couldn't afford to rest any more players because we already had an under-21 squad except for or bench except for Michael Morrison. So we will see how well recovered the players are tomorrow, and if they give me everything what's in their ability, okay, then I can not be unhappy, and whatever the result will be.
Is Igor Duchatelet your top goal scorer, and Goodmanson, are they in contention for Friday evening?
No, Igor is not going to be. We kept on playing him because he was an important player for us, but at this moment he's getting better with his Achilles, and but we won't risk him for tomorrow. And I think George Duchatelet and Frank Moussa they did a good job on Tuesday. Hopefully Duchatelet with the goal he scored and the assist he gave, his confidence was lifted and has given a boost. So we still have to pick the team for tomorrow, but they prove on Tuesday that they can be at use for our team.
I believe Yoni Bynes is out through suspension, is that correct?
Yes, Yoni Bynes he's got his 5th booking. So again, we need to bring another player in that position. But we will see who that's going to be tomorrow. And everybody came well out of the training today. So we will see which team we will pick for tomorrow.
Okay, we'll get to talking about tomorrow's game at Fulham in a few minutes. First of all, we've got a few of your questions that's come in. Pete,
yeah, we got one from a character, I'm not sure who he is, Mr. J. Jackson of Essex. He says, Dickie at the Valley, is it because he likes watching me play every week? He's here so much.
I live nearby and the boss is just really kind to me, but obviously it's because I want to see Jacko play.
Is that what it is?
Obviously.
It's the hair, isn't it? The fluffy.
I'm only envious, that's all it is. Pure jealousy.
All right, but I don't think we're going to drop that question, but we'll come back to a few more questions in a bit. So, Fulham tomorrow, where do you even begin with Fulham? They've had an interesting start to the season, but picked up a little bit.
Yeah, they've started to get it together, and I think in fairness to Kit Simons, he's made some pretty obvious choices under McGatt. Guys at Sky who were coming back from the games going, they just look a bit clueless. He threw loads of youngsters in. It is a really talented academy there, make no mistakes. Woodrow's a really impressive player. Patrick Roberts, if anyone gets a chance to, it is on YouTube, it is on the Fulham website. in the quarterfinals or semi-finals of the FA Youth Cup last season, rolled the ball up the back of his leg over the defender's head and ran on to get a penalty. He's a sensational player. You just can't throw them in all in at once. Simon has done the sensible thing. He's brought in experience and the young players who stand out a mile, and you can see why he's getting results. But it's a really, with Charlton's diligence in games as well, it's a really tough one to call, I think.
You talk about Felix Magath there, a little bit of a disastrous spell there, wasn't it? Were you surprised that it took so long, only a few weeks into the season, but still, it didn't happen in the summer? Were you surprised at that?
It's a very difficult one, isn't it? Because we always say managers don't get enough time. Give them enough time, but
it seems to be a real fundamental problem.
It is, and it's an awful thing to say. But some managers come in, and you just think this isn't going to work. Pepe Mel had the same feel at West Brom, and he just comes in, you just think, just your gut feeling is this isn't going to work. Felix Magath comes in, and you just we'd be in a post-match interview with him. And he'd start the answer, and I didn't know where the end was. I just didn't. I had no idea where we were going. So this is what he's conveying to the players, and then the horror stories afterwards.
His training methods were. I mean, he was huge on physical fitness apparently, and actually ran the players into the ground, and apparently.
And then there was the cheese.
And there's a cheese. But having met him, that doesn't surprise you because he is very, very different. Let's put it nicely. But it never looked like it was going to work.
What do you make of this 5-man panel they've put together? Niall Quinn's on it, Danny Murphy, I'm trying to think what else is on there. But do you think that dilly-dallying a little bit for me?
Because Kit Symons is doing a cracking job, and things have really turned under Kit Symons. And I think he's gone on record saying if he doesn't get the job, he's going to walk away. But he seems to be doing a great job with the team.
I think it's very difficult. I suspect having had, however he's appointed managers before, maybe he's got one advisor, maybe he's got one or two people he's talking to, and he's thinking, I've picked really badly. I mean, you take it back, Al Fayed, with his history, when he took over Fulham, I think Fulham fans thought this could go anywhere. Al Fayed actually had a really great record of choosing managers. Hodgson, I suppose Joel was probably one of his weakest, but Tigana, Coleman with Keane. His track record of picking managers and given the time was first class. So he was clearly being very well advised. I suspect with Khan, he's thought, I'm not picking very well, and he's asked around who would be a good set to. 5 may be too many, but I can kind of see where he's coming from, and I don't think it's a bad idea.
I suppose someone like Niall Quinn, I guess I first saw that and I thought, hang on, why?
It's because he has no connection with Fulham.
But I guess the reason he brought him in is look back at the history books. He was chairman of Sunderland, wasn't he, when they were bottom of the league around the same time. Brought in Roy Keane, they went straight through and won the title.
You can see Danny Murphy, why Danny Murphy played quite successfully at Fulham in the latter part of his career. He finished his career there, and he seems to have a good football brain, and I think a lot of Charlton fans will slaughter me for this, but he seems to know his football, and I think he's a good choice to be on that panel. Danny Murphy.
You look at their team now, you mentioned the youth they've got there, they've had a lot of young players. Do you think that's part of the problem at the start of the season? Do you think it was a little bit too much too soon?
It was just too much. I mean, like I say, they are a really talented crop. They're already linking Patrick Roberts with some of the top sides in the Premier League, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did go in January. Because he's the pick of the bunch, but you look at someone like Callum Woodrow, scored an absolute peach against Rotherham the other night, and the boy's already been, got his international honours early on with England set up, and the 17s and the 18s and the under-21s. It is a really good setup. You need experience, and you need your Scott Parkers to guide them. But I think Kit Symons in charge, and we talked about Bolton earlier. They just could go on a run. You just don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, we touched on the poor start, but if we can have a look at the last 5 results, very much picked up. 3 wins out of the last 5, 1 defeat. You look at
everyone wins at Birmingham, though.
Well, disregarding that, 4-0 against similar Bolton side we saw on Tuesday. Obviously, they were struggling at the time as well because they'd been on a winless or a loss 4 or 5 games in a row, wasn't it? And then, of course, 3 all a time. But that Norwich City result is the one that really stands out for me.
Good teams win at Carrow Road. Good teams. 1-0 wins at Carrow Road. Always a good side.
I mean, they've certainly picked up, haven't they?
Yeah, massively. I mean, Kit's a really sensible guy, and also don't forget he's worked at the academy, so he'll know an awful lot of those lads that have coming through. He'll have known for a long time what their abilities are, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are. So he'll have highlighted very early on who he would like to play and who he wouldn't like to play, or maybe bring them in gently, maybe not put them in the start yet, maybe put them on the bench. But he'll know those kids really, really, really well, and I think that's a massive bonus at this stage to have someone like that in there to guide them. And only time tells if they go somewhere else, or if they think actually let's give Kit a go.
Their big signing in the summer was Ross McCormack from Leeds. He was 29 goals in all competitions last year. Struggling a bit for form, only 2 goals so far. But you can't expect another season. You know, strikers get a season like that once in a lifetime, don't they? Or
yeah, I mean,
do it again.
I think he's a terrific player. It's just unlucky for him with the price tag. I think once the price tag goes through the roof like
that affects the player?
Whether it affects him, it doesn't help him that the team's then playing badly, so he's naturally going to get less chances than he was before. I mean, he's clearly a terrific player for the division, but the price tag might be holding him back. That's only Kit Simons probably knows how to forget about the tag, just go and play your football. Team starts playing better, he gets more chances. He scored the other night. It might just get the ball rolling, but if you've got your 15-20, you'd be there and thereabouts. 29 is exceptional. Yeah. If you get your 15-20, you're in.
I think most clubs, if they had a 20-goal a season striker, we've been crying out for one for a few years. I mean, it'd be perfect.
That's why
we had Bradley Wright Phillips in League One season, but since then, since we've been in the Championship, we've not really had an out-and-out scorer, have we? We've struggled for goals.
Bradley's the sort of person that some Championship clubs, might look at and think, let's bring him back because he scored 26 odd goals in MLS.
He's on fire in the MLS.
But I think shelling out 11 million on someone like Ross McCormack is sort of desperation because you want, as you said, that everyone wants that 20-goal score. So let's.
Well, I think if you're a Championship club and you're spending £11 million on the player, there's an expectation, without a shadow of a doubt, and I'd be pretty demanding as a fan.
Okay. Next up, we've got the second section of our three-part interview with the club's owner, Roland Duchâtelet, in which he discusses the start made by Bob Peters.
Well, you mentioned that some chairmen who want instant success and instant promotion, managers choose more experienced players because they're worried about young players making mistakes possibly, or not, because sometimes not every young player will come through and be instantly successful.
Well, the thing is, in fact, older players also make mistakes, and you can argue just as many or not, but the thing is that if the older proven player makes a mistake, then in fact it's the older player who makes the mistake. If the younger players makes a mistake, then it's the coach or the manager who has the responsibility. That's the big problem, and for the other coaches. But for us, we just think it's the right model for the future because, yes, it is some risk, and it is clear that we will lose more games and we will not be so successful as today all the time. But on the other hand, this is the culture of the club, and if we can be a club who gives the opportunities to many young players to become a professional football player, well, that is also something very important and also something which we can be very proud of.
If you look at our bench last night, I think this is partly because of injuries, but I think 5 of the 7 on the bench were 20 or 21 or under. And obviously that's quite an extreme circumstance because we've had a lot of injuries and things like that lately. But when you say to Bob, the club's philosophy is that we'll play with young players, is there also an extra bit of maybe leeway, or do you allow Bob extra time because if the philosophy brings
so you have to be, that's quite clear. So I'm not so demanding in that sense. I'm happy that that we play good football, and that and it's quite clear that if the results are not there, that's a pity, but that's not. We don't demand success, and Bob knows that. Obviously, he knows that he has. But he also is aware that he has a bunch of good young players, and that's also important. And he will try to do his best with whatever players he gets, and I think also young players are quite good.
Just on Bob, obviously you knew him more than most Charlton fans before he was appointed as head coach. Has he surprised you in any way in what he's done at Charlton?
Well, I think that he is. I think he's very expressive in a way here, which is a bit more expressive than I think he would have been. But other than that, he's behaving more or less in the same way I would have expected him to behave.
Okay, excellent. And we're sitting here after 13 games. We've got 22 points. Bob said to the media on Tuesday night that before the season everyone was saying Charlton bottom 3, bottom 5, bottom 6. Now we're top 8. We've been top 8 for the whole season. Not necessarily has that surprised you, but Roughly where you expected us to be, or is that better than you expected?
Well, I think the situation now is much better than I expected us to be, because this is really, really unexpected. So if Derby wouldn't have won yesterday at the last few minutes with a penalty, they would have against Riga, by the way. But and I think Jose Riga is doing very well, despite the fact they're still last. And if you look at the situation there, it's not easy at all. But to hold out 90 minutes against the first and then there was another game against, I think, Nottingham Forest, which they did pretty well too. So he's doing a very good job there too. So I'm very, very pleased with that. Because he's a very nice person, and I like him very much too. But okay, on the other hand, it also shows that the difference in the league is very, very tiny between the last one and the first one.
And you can see that reflected in the points tally as well.
Yeah.
We're on 22, but if you know, we're only, I think it's 4 points off the top, but also 4 points below us, you could be sort of in the lower half of the table.
Absolutely. So we have always to look downside as well. So we have to look up on the upside, but we have to look also at the relegation, because that's and that's also the attraction of the league. It's such an incredibly competitive league, a very, very, very interesting league. In a way, it's more interesting than the Premier League, because there the difference between the teams is much higher than in the Championship.
Okay, so some more interesting points from Roland. They mentioned that Bob Peters will perhaps be given more time to help develop the young players. I thought that was quite an interesting point you made there.
Yeah, I think he's going to be given a fair amount of, as you said, a fair amount of leeway, and he understands, you know, in terms of experienced first team players, there's a small group, and you have to use the academy players, and that's good. You know, there's not many owners of football clubs, I think, that would be that patient. A lot of them demand success straight away, and you know, they'll be sitting in our position at the moment, and some chairman would say, right, okay, if you don't get promoted, you should get promoted from here. Whereas I don't think Roland's thinking that. He's just thinking, you know, we're overachieving at the moment, as far as from what he's saying. That. So, you know, that's great. We're in a higher position than he was expecting. So it's good that the manager's got time. As we said, we've seen so many managers go in and they get so little time. And, you know, you do it in instant results and it doesn't happen and they're out. So continuity is good.
Yeah. Well, he talked about why he brought, one of the main reasons bringing Bob here was because he works with the young players so and believes in playing young players. He talks about other managers perhaps don't do that because it brings pressure on themselves. Because if they're in and they don't perform, who gets the blame? The manager. Whereas Bob is not scared of doing that. He's not scared of taking the blame for playing young players, and I think that's quite refreshing as well.
It is. I mean, and as I said, it's a pressurised world in football, whatever level. And as you go lower down the levels in League 1 and 2, you see more younger players. But you've got to be fairly brave to do it at this level and the Premiership to be bringing young players through. So, yeah, and be able to do that and not worry about the consequences. And it helps if the owner says, "Do it." Yeah, that's fine. You've got leeway. I understand.
Okay, we still have one more part of that interview to come, coming up shortly. But for now, we have a couple more questions.
Yes, we do. Sam White on YouTube, Dickie, he says, do you think Charlton's academy compares to some of those in the Premier League?
Yeah, definitely. I think we talked about Poyet before. I can see him going for an awful lot of money in 2 or 3 years' time to one of the big hitters. I'm a massive Jordan Cousins fan. I think he's terrific. Gomez, one of the best debuts I've ever seen from a kid. Yeah. I think you'd very quickly. I mean, Jenkinson, we barely saw anything of here until Arsenal snapped him up. But I think you get when players like that are not only coming through playing well here, getting picked up by bigger clubs, it's got to measure up to Premier League clubs. I
think when you're watching a youth player, and Jenkinson and Joe Gomez are two players that the first time I saw Jenkinson in a first team situation, just felt to me that he had time on the ball, and he looked quite relaxed and calm, and he just didn't seem unruffled. And that's that's usually a good sign that a player's come. And Joe Gomez has got that. Yeah,
I think Wenger likes Jenkinson's pro-zone stats because he's up and down the whole game.
Yeah. What are the chances of Duchatelet and Duchatelet playing up front as a front two, Matt Thomas?
Yes, I mean it's not a bad shout. And I think
it started that way.
It did start that way, but I think in fairness to Duchatelet, he didn't Whereas Duchatelet hit the ground running, Tuckered in, it didn't really kick off for him straight away. But again, like I say, if he gets that run in the side, I can see him going with two of them, and that might get them out the habit of the, one up front looking like they're going to draw. Those two up front, if Tuckered in, it's a bit of form, and players aren't just worrying about Duchatelet, got two of them to worry about. I think they'll do a lot of damage in this division.
Okay, CFC Matt on YouTube. Okay, so now you're Bob Peters.
Right.
Yeah. Roland's come to you and said, I'm going to invest some money. All right, I'm going to put a few quid into the club this season. You've got X amount to spend. What positions do we need? What positions would you be looking to improve?
God, that's really hard. I'd probably say, I guess, maybe a winger. I'd like to see a little more. I mean, Cousins, you can put in for Bayerns on Friday. Cousins, the obvious one to move into his favoured centre mid role. So I'd probably maybe look at, Goodmanson can play wide. You could go Musa. You could go. So I'm not awfully sure. I suppose in fairness, you'd probably go another striker is the obvious. An out and out striker is the obvious, because if you lose Duchatelet or Duchatelet, or heaven forbid both, you'd be struggling. So you'd like three good strikers, wouldn't you?
And at the back, you've got cover for left back and right back. Morgan Fox at left back. You've got Joe Gomez at right back. Centre back's going. Michael Morris.
Yeah, exactly. I'd still, with Morgan Fox, I can still see Jeff Stelling doing when he scores his first goal, his auntie Megan will be delighted. Well, I can see it coming a mile away.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can. So, I think you've answered this already. Bayerns is out tomorrow. Jordan Cousins in there for him, out on the left.
Yeah, every day of the week, I think they'll put you out wide. Cousins in his favourite role. Cousins has warmed to the wide role, but he's a natural centre mid.
I'm not convinced with that myself. Him out on the left, I'd rather see him in the midfield.
I'd rather see him in the centre mid, but I think he's made a real good effort of being pushed out wide.
Okay, while we were enjoying the comforts of home on Tuesday night, Fulham made the long trip to South Yorkshire to face Rotherham. Here are the highlights.
Dispossessed, it's Frecklington who comes away with the ball for Rotherham. Neville making the run ahead of him. Instead it's with Paul Taylor. He's going to have a go, hits Revel, goes in. Rotherham with the breakthrough just before the half hour. Well, Alex Revel is going to claim the goal. Paul Taylor will try to as well. It was his shot that clipped his teammate on the way through. Having scored against Leeds United on Friday, it's going to be 2-2 for Revel. I think it's going to be his goal. It's the final touch. It's neatly done. Wide open up here for George Williams, who then goes down in the box under the challenge of Frecklington, and it is a penalty. And Fulham will have the chance to get back on terms. Referee Brown pointing straight to the spot. A very good view of it to the referee. Ross McCormack is standing over the kick. And McCormack levels it up. Sends Colin the wrong way from the spot. They were behind for just 5 minutes. Fourth goal for the club for Ross McCormack. It's going to be a long throw then from Carrie Arneson, launched into the danger area. Comes back to him. Leaves it for Pringle. To deliver the cross. It's a fine finish from Johnson Clark-Harris. Rotherham back in front. He also scores in a second successive game. Really well taken goal. So I'm going to have to do this the hard way for a second time. We have all sorts of space here though. Christensen. Options either side. With Corley Woodrow, and it's 2-2. They have levelled it up for a second time. It only took 3 minutes this time. And it's the first goal of the season for Corley Woodrow. Finds the top corner. Game on again. Fulham corner. Right into the heart of the penalty area, but Rotherham dealt with it well and could perhaps now counter. Taylor's done really well to surge into space, covered good ground. Support from Green. Taylor's continued his run into the middle. He wasn't far away from getting a foot on it. Comes for Pringle instead to fizz it in, and it has gone in. Off Badurov, an own goal, and Rotherham lead for a third time with just 4 minutes to play. Ben Pringle who fired it in, it's off the defender. And the Fulham corner. Headed down and in, and they've levelled it for a third time. Incredible. It's Dan Byrne in the last minute of the match. 3-3 at the New York Stadium. And Dan Burn, with his first league goal for Fulham, has surely rescued a point. And this has been quite some contest. Is there time for one further twist in the tail? Dembele trying to go through, Collins off his line, Arneson to clear, hits his own man, and it's gone behind for the corner kick. Incredible finish to this match. By McCormack too close to the goalkeeper, that should be that. Well, thrilling fair we've had here tonight. 3 times Rotherham took the lead, 3 times Kit Simon's team battled back.
Okay, so there you go, a bit of a thriller up at the New York Stadium there. But a long way to go on a Tuesday night when you've got a Friday game coming off the back of it. Do you think it will have an effect?
No, I think that sports science is so advanced these days, and we saw with us last year at that back end of the season, you know, with that 8-week period where it was pretty much Saturday, Tuesday. I think they'll be recovered and they'll be rested. So I think you can ignore that. That won't come into it. When they cross that white line, there won't be.
I know what I prefer though. If I was a player going up to have
but you know, I think once they cross that, they walk out on that pitch, get their shirts on, and come out. I don't think it will be in their minds at all, and I don't think it'll affect them too much. If it's February or March, I'm thinking you might be thinking maybe. Possibly. It's been a long season, but it's barely November. It shouldn't be too bad. They shouldn't all be Raheem Sterling.
Well, let's hope they will be. Pete, 2 more questions just to finish off with.
Yeah, sort of reception. Scott Parker's going to get a Friday night.
We've touched on this for the last couple of weeks, haven't we?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I think there is a huge amount of Charlton fans that really cannot forgive him. I think not because he left. I think it's the way he left. I can understand. I am one of those that sort of can understand. One of the top clubs in the country comes knocking.
But we were one of the top clubs in the country.
No, but especially then when the money was coming in, they were clearly going places.
They clearly were going places. And Claudio Ranieri decided, I want Scott Parker. And I think any footballer in the world is going to want to. I just think Scott went round the wrong way about it, and
it was very painful at the time. Stuff's happened now, and I think. Whereas he came back with Newcastle in about 18 months, 2 years later, that's the only time he's ever come back here.
Yeah, and he got a huge amount of. I think it upset him as well, because I do remember he coming towards the North Stand, attacking the North Stand. And after the move had finished, the Charlton fans were just giving him the grief, and he just looked up and he was shaking his head.
He scored a goal though, didn't he?
Yeah, but I think, but then he was getting so much grief.
Yeah, it's fair enough, isn't it?
Another one, Chris Solly. Can he kick on? Can he keep improving? And what do you think, Chris Solly?
I suppose with Solly, the only thing that strikes me that's holding him back is injury.
Yeah.
He's, when he can't play 3 games a week, you just worry that will. But every time I see him, he's absolutely sensational.
Yeah, because from the minute he came into side, you looked at him and you thought he's going to struggle because of his height, and yet he's developed a way that he'll stand off the defender, let them win it in the air, and then I'll have him once they get the ball on the floor.
But still leaps like a salmon as well.
He leaps like a salmon, and if he doesn't get you in the first attempt, he recovers well as well, and will get back in and try and stop that cross coming in. So I think
and not many times when a fullback's the man of the match, how many times do you come off the pitch and say, Solly was the best player on the park tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, before we leave you with the final part of our interview with Roland Duchâtelet, there's just time for me to thank Dickie Davis, Peter Finch and you for watching. We'll see you at Craven Cottage tomorrow night. Good night.
You mentioned that we're performing perhaps better than you maybe expected pre-season at the moment. Does that then, if it stays like this, does it change your expectations? For example?
No, I think we all should be very sensible and be aware that we are overperforming currently. Mm-hmm. Compared to what we would normally do. So we should be very pleased that we do, but we shouldn't take it for granted. So it will be on a game by game basis. We should try to continue like this, obviously, but every extra point we can build in as a security, we should enjoy, and of course we should also try to continue to do our best to maybe to get into the playoffs, and get a chance to go to Premier League. Why not? But then it's great, and then it will be it will be really deserved, and that's much better than what other clubs do, and to crazy things really to get this promotion.
I think the fans watching this interview on the show would be annoyed if I didn't ask this question. But just say it's January time and Charlton are 5th in the table, and Bob Peters says maybe 1 or 2 more players and we have a chance at the playoffs. Is that part of the plan, or is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have a very good position still in January, that may induce us to strengthen the team a bit. The thing is also you have to be very careful in not having too many players, because if you have too many players, then in a dressing room that can have a negative effect if you have too many players. We have to be careful with that, but of course 1 or 2 extra players which really add more value might be something we do, but we have to also to concede that today we're doing pretty well. In fact, the main danger today is that we would have more injuries, and that would be in fact the consideration. That we might need a few other very good players to make sure that when there are injuries or more injuries, that we still can compete decently.
Just you mentioned progress, and we touched on the pitch earlier, the stadium, and even reflected to the first team now. I mean, we're in October now. It's barely 10 months after you took over at Charlton. Does it feel almost longer than 10 months, given how much change there's been and how much has been achieved in that time?
It feels a little bit longer than 10 months, really, if you see the way we have in the meantime. And I think we're doing pretty well, and now we need to continue in that way of working, improve all the time, and but in a very gentle way, and not. We shouldn't rush. We have to work decently and improve all the time in all aspects, and that's what the goal is.